How y'all doing? How y'all doing, boys and girls? Welcome to Unc and man. Sad. We're at the end of although we come to the end of the road.
dude,
Hey,
dude, man,
come
you're
on now.
going '90s R&B on me. That's fucking hip.
I have to, brother. How you doing, Unc? Let's talk to him.
Doing all right, buddy. I'm just like I said in the pre-show talk there. I'm just like I can't believe we're finally we're at the end of the road, literally, like for the season. For fantasy, it's
Mhm.
championship weekend here. A lot of things getting sorted out in the playoff hunts. Nothing is completely decided as yet, although we got a couple of answers yesterday on how things are look like they're going to shake out, at least in the AFC. But we got some
Mhm.
big games in the NFC North this weekend. I mean, we got some fun stuff.
Man, we got a lot of fun stuff, man. I'm telling you right now. Fantastic season, fantastic time. Shout out to everybody who's been supporting us and showing love. And like I put in the chat, like the stream, best way to support the last
Yep,
part of the season, man. Thank you so
always.
much. Everybody who's came through the chat, Sleepy Euphoria, Rob, Kareem, everybody who came through, showing us love. People watching on the replay. I got a lot of people who watch on the replay.
Yeah,
Last episode, we had like 90 some people who watched,
I
you know what I mean?
saw that, man. That was
Did you see it?
almost a high watermark. I think it was for the season as well too. So that was really interesting that we got a
Man.
lot of views last week.
I'm telling you, man, you keep it tight, you keep it like condensed, and we
Yeah,
were hitting it well. And I just saw a marked difference, and I appreciate everybody. We could even have two viewers, one viewer, doesn't matter as long as you're rocking with us because we rocking with you, and we do it for the love, y'all. We do it
yeah.
for the love of the game,
This is all about
Yeah,
the love of talking football, right? I mean, like, this is how we
yeah,
met. I mean, doing a podcast was the most natural thing in the world for you and me after we
straight
met
up.
and sort of established a friendship. It was just like it's been the most natural, organic process in the world. Just putting
And
a
you know the
camera on.
just this like we would chop it up like this without no cameras. We would be
That's
going off
it.
like this without a single camera, without no mics. This is just me and
That's
Unc Griffin.
That's it, man. This literally was the most natural thing in the world to do this podcast. And here we are at the end of our third season, right? So kudos to us.
Beautiful.
And big
You
ups to
know,
the people who have supported us. That's the biggest thing, man. Yeah, that makes it all worthwhile.
man, you know what? Let me tell you like this, man. We have to have a real conversation. And before we get into it, we have to really have a conversation about this ugly looking MFer. Because he put up a clinic. He put
Joe
up a
Burrow.
clinic, brother. What was that, Unc? Tell me your thoughts about that game, man.
Well, my goodness, we've all been talking about this all year long. Certainly from the
Mhm,
beginning of the season when the Bengals were really struggling. There were 2 or 3 games below 500, and it looked like it was going to be a lost season. But we
mhm,
quietly noted that Joe Burrow at the same time was managing to play the best quarterback of his career, and he's done
mhm.
it throughout the season. Don't slip on the Bengals. Anyhow, they get into this playoff. Like we'll discuss this more when we talk about our fantasy a little bit, but like in fantasy, the Bengals over the last 4 weeks have the number one defense in fantasy. It's so
What?
like the Bengals are tightening up on defense and they haven't been slacking off on with Burrow, and also Chase Brown is the number one RB in the NFL fantasy over the last 4 weeks. So like nobody wants to play the Bengals right now, especially the Steelers next weekend. Right? Because like the
Wow.
Bengals have to win that game. Actually, they had to win yesterday, and they had to win, and they have to win next week against the Steelers.
Mm,
So their work's cut out for them. But like in fact, Indianapolis and Denver both, if they win out, they actually have a better percentage to go in than the Bengals. But anyhow, the
mm.
Bengals get in. Like look out, because Joe Burrow has shown that he can play with just about anybody at any time. Because Bo Nix had a good game yesterday. They
Fantastic.
scored 24 points, right? He had three
Mhm.
touchdowns. Their receiver core were all involved. And like they couldn't pull it out. That was a really big game. That was an important game. Denver needed to win that game, and they couldn't. Right. So look out for the Bengals, man, because Joe Burrow has been playing A1 quarterback this season.
Amazing quarterback. And who would have guessed
Yeah.
that by this point in the season, the Bengals would be 8-8. And
Yeah.
guess what? They have an outside chance of making the playoffs. Obviously, if if the Broncos beat the Chiefs next week, Broncos are automatically in. The AFC picture is basically all set. They only need one more team to come in, but the Bengals need a lot of things to fall in place for them
Yeah.
to make it as an eighth seed. But I think maybe it'll be seventh seed. My bad. In
Yep.
general, he put up 412 yards, three touchdowns, no picks, and made T. Higgins a multi-generational millionaire because T. Higgins is going to get paid by like the Chargers or maybe the Commanders next year with a hefty bag. So Joe Burrow gave T. Higgins the biggest gift, Christmas gift, post Christmas gift.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, even Bo Nix was fighting it out. Even though Bo Nix had that ugly interception, Nix and the Burrow were battling it out, man,
Yeah.
all
It
the
was
way
a
into
great
overtime.
game.
Fantastic game to watch, bro.
Yeah. No, I'm
Yeah,
telling you. Bomani Jones made a funny joke earlier on in the season when Joe Burrow showed up with that new haircut. It was like something. It was cut severely, and he had the tips all dyed out and all that type of stuff.
yeah.
And he made a funny comment about, oh snap, oh look out, the moody white kid showed up with the new severe looking haircut. This doesn't work out in public schools, right? It's like a school shooting waiting to happen because the moody emo kid has suddenly got a new haircut. Doesn't bear well for anybody. Well, turns out Bomani was right, but in football terms, because as
Right.
that haircut became less severe, it started to look more normal. But it really was like a sign of like something needs to change here. Burrow's like deeply concerned one way or the other, and action had to take place, and he did it. He was that
Yeah.
Columbine kid, but on the football field all year
Yes.
long. Even though the team stunk, he refused to give in, and he just kept firing and firing and firing it downfield. And I'm telling you, man,
Mhm.
like Burrow's, anybody who drafted Burrow on a lark this year was probably extremely happy.
Oh, absolutely. And anybody who pulls stock on the Chargers family, you are a smart individual because the Chargers got to spanking the Patriots. It looked like they didn't
Oh,
even deserve to be on the same field. I watched like half the game and I was like, I'm turning it off. It is what it
yeah.
is. What were
Oh,
your thoughts about that spanking?
it was a complete blowout. Just an absolute blowout. Like it was the game that we thought Josh Allen and the Bills would lay on the Pats the week before.
Yes.
So I'm sure
Yes.
bettors were
Yeah.
nervous going into this game, but the Chargers did exactly everything you thought they would do on both sides of the ball. Nice to see
Mhm.
J.K. Dobbins back in there again.
Yep.
The time of possession for the Chargers was 2-1, like more than 2-1. It was like 40
Wow.
plus minutes versus 19 and a half for the Pats, right? Like they're barely on the field. The Chargers
Mhm.
defense had 4 sacks. They got a fumble. Herbert was fantasy gold with 26 for 38, 3 TDs.
Mhm.
Plus his running backs were in there. The defense was locking it down. I mean, shoot. Yeah, he had 428 yards versus
Yeah.
Drake May got like something like 181, or the Pats themselves. No, the Pats got 181 total yards. Drake May was
Wow.
terrible. His
So
running
bad.
backs couldn't do anything, and the Chargers had 428 yards of offense. And like I said, that time of possession. So yeah, it was a boring game. I could see how somebody would turn it off even after the first quarter, let alone the second, because the Pats mailed it in completely, stymieing betters once again.
I will say it like this: the Patriots are in the Travis Hunter sweepstakes, bro. They want that. They want that top pick. They want that
Yeah,
Travis Hunter. They want somebody else to help out that defense because that defense is not the Patriots way that we've known. they looked horrible, man. And you know what? I'm
Really
giving props to
bad.
the Chargers for actually exploiting that horrible defense. And you know what? Let's not talk about these beat out
Yeah,
games. We're not talking
terrible
college
game.
football, bro. We're done with the blowouts. Let's talk about an interesting low scoring game. You have to bet the whoever bet the under on this game, you're a smart man. Because I would have bet the over, but long
Yeah,
story short, the Rams s- essentially smoke out the Cardinals. The Cardinals would have been spoilers and given the
yeah.
Seahawks a back door, by the way. But long story short, Chargers quiet as kept on like a 3 game winning streak. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
10
Yeah.
and 6 leading that division. And whoever has Trey McBride on their fantasy, you probably won your championship last night. Talk to us, Unc.
Well, he finally got off the schneid on touchdowns, but like
Mhm.
that guy is again. I remember I was talking about the number one players over the last 4 weeks. McBride again was the number one player over the last 4 weeks with zero touchdowns. He's getting
Yep.
so like if you have a PPR league, he's getting you ridiculous points, even half a PPR, right? Like because he's getting like 12, 13 catches on top of like 100 yards. And that's how he's
Yes.
managing. Like he put up 24 points in his last game. How he did that
Yeah.
without a touchdown is remarkable. So yeah, yeah, no. Trey McBride has been all the receiving offense, and Arizona's been a sort of a big disappointment as far as
Yeah.
their yeah, because Kyler Murray's gone from like the number 4 fantasy quarterback to number 10 over the last
Yeah.
month 6 weeks. Right, they've really come up short. And now the team, though, to look at again, we were talking about the Bengals. Well, their counterpart in the Super Bowl a few years ago, the LA Rams are the next team that's winning by any
Yeah.
means necessary, whether it's a field goal contest, scratch out one TD and a couple of field goals. They keep winning both low scoring and high scoring games. I'm starting to get nervous about the Rams as a wild card team. I don't think they're going to do a dent on the NFC North, but wow, be careful, be mindful of the Rams right now.
You don't want to see this team on your schedule if you're the Vikings, if you're Green Bay, damn,
Yeah,
if you're even the Lions. I like because they
that's
can
right.
beat you in so many ways. They can go put up 40 points with the Buffalo Bills, or they can put up 13. Like
Right,
what?
like
And
like
still win.
they're not quite as in depth as some of these other dominant teams. But think about it.
Yeah.
You got Stafford at quarterback, Kyron Williams at running back, Puka Nakua. Like you've got all the skill positions that you need to get it done if your lines can hold. So yeah, look out for the Rams, man.
And I'm telling you like this, man. One thing the Rams are not gonna do is give us blowouts. And when I'm
Not
talking
right
about
now.
blowouts,
No, that's the one thing they're not doing right now.
they're now doing blowouts. And when talking about blowouts, we gotta talk about that Christmas Day massacre on the two-header, bro. Your quick takes on that Ravens versus Houston game. Lamar putting up a MV3. That's what they're calling it now. MV3, not MVP, MV3
Right.
versus the Houston. By the way, shout out Beyonce. You know what I mean? She was a fantastic part of the show.
Oh
But
yeah.
Henry and Lamar put up a clinic, and Houston,
A
we just
running clinic.
a running clinic, exactly. Houston, we have a problem. Talk to us, Unc.
Yeah, yeah, they've got a real problem, and it's called CJ Stroud having it's officially a sophomore slump. Yeah, he's not going to regress to the positive anytime this season. He's just having a sophomore slump. Better luck for him next year. I hope it goes better. But
Mhm.
this was a shutout. Like they got two
Yes.
points. What was it? They got a safety by accident or something like that.
Hmm.
But like 31-0, and it was done early, right? There was
Yep.
never any threat whatsoever. Yeah, Lamar definitely padding his stats there. And yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that in that game it was just a sign that, you know, in the same way the Steelers were, cresting earlier on in the season, Lamar and the Ravens seem to have tightened up the defense a little bit. They've locked down some errors, and that game was a testimony of just how ready for the playoffs Lamar and the Baltimore Ravens appear to be.
I'm gonna break your heart, Unc. I'm sorry. I'm gonna break your heart. We gotta start talking, brother. about the Steelers. What was that, my man? I was like, what's going on in the sense that this is not the Steelers team we've been seeing. And guess what? The Chiefs capitalized 20, I think, what was it? Let me check again. 29 to
29-10.
10. And somehow Travis Kelsey came back. And I've been looking at some Steeler, talk online. They kind of want Fields back. They want Fields back. Talk to me,
Well,
Unc.
yeah. Well, I mean, there was. I don't think either quarterback is the solution right now because the offensive line allowed 5 sacks. So maybe
Mm,
Fields would have eluded two or more of those sacks, perhaps, and then maybe he would have done something on the side. But that game wasn't really over until we got into the fourth quarter. We talked about how Casey's like a boa constrictor on defense, and they absolutely did that. But the Steelers played the game they wanted to play. Pickens was back. They had 200 yards of rushing between Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. I mean, the Steelers played the game they wanted to play. It just wasn't good enough because Mahomes was back. Mahomes threw,
oh,
Mahomes threw for 3 touchdowns. But I don't think this is the end of the Steelers by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're having a bit of a slump. It's the wrong time of the season. But as we've
mm,
seen, we've seen Baltimore. We've seen every team except the
mm,
Chiefs that are any good this year have pockets where we can't explain their performance, and that's what's going on right now with the Steelers. I
mm,
have a feeling they're going to have to go on the road, probably to Houston to play Houston, but they should probably come out of that game all right, and
mm,
hopefully, be back for the rubber match like we talked about against Baltimore. Yeah, no, as realistic and as pragmatic as I am in my partisan Steelers fandom and all that type of stuff. You know me. I've always, I've never like overdone them. I've never gone over the top. I've never been Steelers win no matter what. Like, because after all
yeah.
these years, I know better than that. But I genuinely believe that the Steelers are having a bit of a dip at the end of the line. They're safely in the playoffs, but once in the playoffs, I think they're going to do well. Right. And if they have to go on the road to M&T Bank Stadium to Baltimore, sorry, buddy, but we've been there before, and this would be the rubber match, right?
Yeah.
The likelihood is it easy to beat a team like the Steelers two times in a row, let alone twice in a season? So
Oh,
book ain't
oh.
written yet, buddy. But the Steelers do have the Steelers need to tighten it up quick.
I will say it like this, man. You are absolutely right in the sense that it's looking like a rubber match. In other words, it's looking like we're going to have another Steelers versus Ravens in the divisional. Shout out to Roberto Rob in the chat. Steelers country, that's right. I'm saying Mr. Unlimited is not so unlimited. He's limited currently, but you're right. It's probably a
Yeah.
slump. You know what I mean? End of the season slump. But when you guys facing, I'm not sure who Bengals next week. Is it Bengals next week? If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
Bengals. I think they're at
Oh,
home,
it's tough
right?
one.
Like the Steelers should win, but like, what are they going to do, man? How are they going to? They need to come up with at least 30 points to win that game, as we've seen.
Oh, you did. Yes, 30 points necessary. And at that point, Houston will be a cakewalk because I think Houston is broken. Like that whole division is broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
yeah, divisional will
put
be
it this
definitely
way:
a
if the
cakewalk.
Steelers
Mm.
can pull out the win against the Bengals and their high flying offense, if they fucking win like 31-30 or 31-28 or something like that against the Bengals, we'll know that they'll be in a good spot going up against Houston. Because even if Houston gets it together, we've still seen the Steelers score. So, yeah.
And you know what? Let's get into it, man. The reason for the season, the reason for the title, we're talking about it. Lamar versus Josh Allen. And by the way, I want y'all, even you, Roberto, I want you obviously like the stream, but stay here till the very end. We got some very good anecdotes coming up. Lamar versus Josh Allen for the MVP. This
Yeah.
conversation has gotten hotter by the week in the sense that Josh Allen has played fantastic. You know what I mean? Especially versus the Chiefs and then the
Yeah.
Lions and then Lamar Jackson in this late season push where he had 3 games in 11 days. Insane that the schedule makers did that. But there was 3 games in 11 days. The Chiefs did the same thing. Well, Lamar's been putting up great statistics. Unc, who do you think ends up with the MVP title for this year? regarding Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Good arguments on both sides. What do you think, Unc?
Yeah. Well, I feel okay.
Mm,
I'm just gonna say it, put it right out there right now. Remember that thing where Miles Garrett got the defensive MVP? Was it last year, the year before? And everybody was like going, but didn't TJ have officially better stats? Right? And
mm-hmm.
everybody was, quiet as it's kept, sort of like saying that, well, it was kind of Miles' turn because TJ's already had one or two defensive MVPs, right? So wasn't that going to be his third MVP, or would it have been back to back? But for some reason,
Would have been
the
more. Yeah, it would have
narrative
been
went
more.
against TJ Watt and went in favor of Miles Garrett, despite the stats. And
Yes.
unfortunately, I sense the same thing bubbling up. Ryan
Yeah.
Clark had a very aggressive take.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Clark, where he said that it ain't right, but Josh Allen looks like he may win this award because it's being narrative driven. He hasn't won it before, same like Miles Garrett, and
Mm-hmm.
Lamar has two in his pocket. Right? They
Yeah.
didn't even want to give him the second one, but they couldn't do it. But now here he is having his even better season, his third MVP season. Because let me break it down for you on the numbers. Because Lamar is solidly in front of Josh Allen as far as the actual numbers are concerned. The only way he gets this MVP is if people are saying, yeah, but look what is an MVP really? Right? Look at what Josh Allen has done for Buffalo. They thought they were going to struggle this year and go 10-7 because they didn't have a receiver core. Instead, they're 12-3, challenging the Chiefs for the overall number one. None of this was supposed to happen, but it's only because of must be Josh Allen. It has to be Josh Allen, right? So people are talking it up so much that it being sort of the QB nature of the MVP award in the NFL. It's rather than even like talking about how we were last week about Saquon should be the MVP most likely, but
Mm-hmm.
they want to give it. They really want to give it to Josh. I'm sure of it. They want to do it, right? But the reality is that Lamar's better. So let me give you the numbers and tell you why this is a travesty of justice and that Lamar should be getting a second MVP, assuming everything continues the way it is right now.
Right.
Because look at it like this. Lamar so far has just short of 4,000 passing yards. He's number 4 overall, 3,955 passing yards, 39 TDs, which is second, only 4 interceptions. He's got the number 1 QBR rating. For rushing, he's 130 for 852. Like we said last week, he's the number 25 running back, as well as being the number 1 quarterback, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 6.5 yards per carry and 4 TDs, right, in 16 games. Now, Josh Allen, I believe, is about to play his 16th game.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
right, so the numbers are slightly askew, but
Mm-hmm.
he's going to need a 400-yard game.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to need a 400-yard game to catch up to where Lamar is right now, right? So it's not like Lamar's got like some 128-yard lead over Josh with a game and a half, a game in hand, right? But he's only 6 overall in TDs. Josh, he's got 26. He's got more interceptions, 6 interceptions. QBR is second behind Lamar,
Yeah.
and rushing he's 97 for 514, right? Again, good
Mm-hmm.
numbers, but not nearly as impressive as Lamar.
Right.
5.3 yards per carry as opposed to 6.5, but he does have 11 rushing TDs. So that means at this moment right now, he's got himself 37 TDs. Lamar has 41, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me, 43.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, there's a clear difference to me in the offensive output, right? Like, they
Mm-hmm.
might be 1 and 2, but Lamar is significantly number 1 over Josh Allen. And he's also got an almost 70% completion record. So,
Right.
right. So I believe that Lamar and Lamar, like, give me a break, man. Lamar's doing lots of stuff for his team too, right? He's had to overcome problems on defense,
Oh
and
yes. Oh
he
yes.
has. Right?
Oh
So,
yes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So their team may not have quite as many wins. Buffalo's one game ahead on the win factor, right? They got one game in hand, but we shall see. We shall see how
Mm,
this plays out because Lamar's now 11-5 and on a hot streak, right? So we'll see how it plays out. But I have a feeling that this is going to be narrative driven rather than data driven, and that pisses me off, to be quite honest with you. I
yeah.
think Lamar deserves his third.
You already know what I was gonna say. I agree with it, and even
Sure.
just objectively, because if you look at it, right, I'm a Josh Allen fan. I like Josh Allen, and I
Yeah,
am
I love
impressed
Josh
by
Allen.
his season. I'm impressed by his season, so I won't be tripping too much. But I just don't like how it's become now narrative driven, and now we're forgetting the
Well,
stats and really what we're watching on the field. Because if you look at it, Lamar is a massive reason the Ravens are on a win streak right now. That run that he had versus Houston, where he was just gashing them for 47 yards, past Michael Vick's rushing record. I think he
mhm.
deserves. He's having his best statistical season right now,
Yep. But
better
the
than
thing
all the
is,
previous
though,
MVPs.
you
So
you know how it goes
it
with
is good.
Lamar. You know how it
What?
goes with Lamar because of his
Mm,
profile, his character, who he
man,
is. Dark skinned black guy, don't give a fuck about his hair, all that shit.
from
He's
Florida.
rugged, right? He's a rugged man. He's
Yeah,
a
big
rugged
brother, man,
dude,
for
right?
sure.
Right? And he don't make
Uh,
no apologies to anybody. Now, Josh
Nah.
doesn't need to make apologies for himself. He is who he is, right? Country kid from Northern
Mhm.
California. He's a farm country guy, whatever. But the reality is that when the rest of America looks at this race, right? When the rest of the sports writers look at this race, you and I both
Mhm.
know goddamn well what they want to do.
Come on, bruh. The fix is in. Y'all already know what it is. The fix is in.
You
Lamar
know
could
what
go
they
off
want to
next
do.
week. We all know what the time it is, bruh. I'm saying it like this. There could be a back door. What is the back door? I'll tell you what the back door is. The Jets have nothing to play for. They're playing the Buffalo Bills this weekend. Tomorrow, next week, the
Yeah.
New England Patriots have nothing to play for. They play Buffalo.
And
If
you
one of
saw what
those
they did
teams
last
wins,
time.
oh, that's what I'm saying. If one of those teams steps up and gets Buffalo and Josh Allen to get out of character, that's the only way I think Lamar wins. But it's pretty
And,
much wrapped up. I think
and did you
people have
see?
a pity, sympathy MVP they want to give to Josh Allen
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Josh
That's
Allen,
right.
he is the all American type of guy that fits what they like. Nah,
And
yeah,
we'll talk about this more in the lines and spreads. But look at the
right.
scoreboard the last time New York played Buffalo, and that's when the pressure was on. They only
Ooh,
lost by 3 points,
ooh,
man. And this week,
ooh.
Rogers and Adams are playing well, and
Mhm.
Lord, they got nothing to lose, man.
They got nothing to lose, bro. And if you have Devontae Adams in your fantasy lineup, he ain't got nothing to lose either,
Get
bro.
them
You
out
better
there.
start that motherfucker in that championship, bro. And we're gonna do a new segment with y'all, man. Actually, you know what's funny enough? Next week is technically the last week of the season, so we might have one more episode left. We might have prematurely said something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it depends,
Mm,
right? I mean, you'd have to take the fantasy
mm,
segment out of it, but yeah, no, we could discuss
mm.
playoffs at length next week.
We could do a playoff thing. Get in the chat, people. Talk us on the back end. New segment, y'all. Our top five teams. What are our
Yep,
top five teams going into the playoffs? We might have a more in-depth discussion about playoffs. Fantasy will obviously be over. We'll talk lines and spreads. It'll be a shorter episode next week for the people who come through. Top five teams, Unc. What are you thinking as we
right.
go into the playoffs? What are your top five teams? In general, what are you looking
Okay.
at with the
Well,
top five teams?
I think that you have to discuss them top five in offense, top five in defense, and then sort of come up with some type of synthesis to figure out
Mm,
which ones are the best overall.
yes,
So the
sir.
top five teams on offense are respectively from 1 to 5 are the Lions with 61 touchdowns, the Ravens with 60, the Bills with 58, the Bengals with 56. Right, Bengals number 4 offense,
Oh,
scoring
wow.
offense, and the Bucks come in. They're the only other team above 50. Right,
Mm,
so and they're significantly different from that top 4 right there. but the Bucks have scored 50 touchdowns this year, right? So again, these are teams that are scoring, between 3 and 4 touchdowns a game.
Mm.
For points against, Minnesota leads. They're the number one defensive team with only 276 points scored against.
Mm.
Chargers 281, Philly 283, Green Bay 287,
Oh.
KC at 288, and I included number 6 Detroit at 299 because it sort of plays into the overall algorithm that we come up with here to say who's like the number one looking team. Detroit
Mm.
is, in fact, the only team to appear fully balanced because even though they're at number 6, they're still in that top tier of defenses, but also number 1 in offense, right? Now,
Mm.
so the top 5 teams regarding points for and points against, the difference, right? Because it's no good if you score 30 points a game, but you allow 28, right? So that's also a
Facts.
measure, right?
Right.
So Detroit is plus 194. So that's basically like plus 12 to 13 points a game. They score almost 2 touchdowns more than they have scored against them. Buffalo's number 2 at 138. Baltimore's
Mm.
plus 132 for the number 3 spot. Green
Mm.
Bay is number 4 at plus 126. And Minnesota's fifth at 120, plus 120. And we got to include Philly in there at number 6 again for the same reason, because they're only at plus 119. So they're very close to Minnesota. And there is no other team that's really close to these guys after that. These are by far the
Mm.
number 1 tier as far as point differentials go when you're measuring these teams. So
Nice.
the only teams with 3-digit plus or minus differentials are
Mm.
you've got KC, Chargers, Denver, Tampa Bay, and Washington. They all have 97, 87, 75. So they're not near those top ones. But
Mm.
just in case you were wondering where those teams were. And the Steelers and Cincinnati are both positive, plus 35
Okay.
and plus 36. And that's just a note for
Ooh.
next week's game, like we were talking, right? But so there you go. So there's your top 5 team sort of arrangement. So out of all those stats, how would you sort of
Mm.
list your top 5 teams? Well, I think you have to
Mm.
basically take Buffalo, the Bengals, or pardon me, Buffalo, the Ravens, and the NFC North, and then throw
Mm.
KC in there as against the field type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like the only reason KC sort of makes that whole thing in there is simply because they've only got 1 loss, and you kind of
Mm.
have to sort of like put them in there almost as like a wild card, as the champ from last year, and all that type of stuff. In other words, you can't exclude KC from this. I don't care what their numbers say. But as far
Yeah.
as 5 more teams that could compete with them, that's it.
I rock with it, man. Simply said, for me, I got number 1 is the Chiefs. Number 2, and this is gonna shock some people. This is just me. Minnesota. I see
Yep.
something. I've seen something, and based on your analytics and your formula, they are really good on O and especially defense. I got Minnesota
Yep.
number 2. Eagles number 3 with Jalen Hurts is in there. They're just hard to deal with.
That's
Number
it.
4 for me would be the Detroit Lions, and 5 to wrap it up. I'm gonna go Green Bay Packers, man. That NFC North is so
Wow.
deadly. I
Whoa.
cannot see any team coming out of the NFC that is not an NFC North team.
Yeah.
I was going for the Eagles a bit earlier, but it was especially what we saw recently with the Eagles. It
Yep.
can be God. Do you understand the Eagles facing Minnesota in the playoffs? Who do you got? I got Minnesota, man.
I would take
That
Minnesota
team
all
is
day long,
crazy, bro.
especially because they would probably be at home.
Yes, they'll be in the dome. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And this
Yep.
is the most fascinating division I've ever seen. Their worst team, well, not the worst, sorry, that's the Chicago Bears. You know what I mean? But their third team is 11-4. How are you third in your division? You're 11-4. Like, what in the
How are you
hell?
third? How are you third in your division and ranked number 6 against the entire NFC?
Like, what?
Yeah, you're number 3 in your division, but yet you're somehow the number 6 ranked team heading into the playoffs, right? Like shit.
Makes zero. That
If
tells you the
if not
quality
5,
of
like
them,
shit.
It's insane, brother. And I'm telling you right now, it's gonna be a burnout to see who's gonna take that division
Oh
because
yeah.
it's the difference between a second seed or like it go down to like a sixth seed apparently,
It,
right? Isn't that
the
the
difference
difference?
between being at home and on the road, and I'm pretty sure it's Green Bay, Minnesota next weekend
Yes, that's man. We are
in
getting treated to
Minnesota.
a lot of great football, brother. Hey,
In Minnesota,
we
dude. Like that's gonna be a sick game.
we already know our game of the week. You know what I mean? We already know. That's a new segment for y'all people. A little top five. We'll expand on that when we have a little playoff preview next week.
well,
Hey
well,
man, we
it's
giving y'all double dose.
yeah.
Go
Well, it's true though. Like a top five isn't
ahead.
really relevant before December. You know what I mean? So
No, not
it
really.
takes a while to really sort of aggregate all this data and give a consistent and accurate assessment of
Mhm.
who's the top five or so.
Absolutely. And you know what? We got to do some top five money, man. Some top
Yeah,
five picks, brother.
for
Somebody
sure, buddy.
says for week 17. Shout out to Roberto in the chat. Roberto, you better give us some of your picks, bro.
Yeah,
Anyways,
man.
what are your games you circled out, man?
Well, yeah, there's some interesting ones on here, and there's some real
Mhm.
dregs and real crap too, right? I mean, the first three games are like India, the New York Giants, the Raiders at New Orleans, Tennessee at Jacksonville. Like those are brutal games, man. But
Yeah.
the ones that I have circled that look interesting, obviously, pardon me, sorry, Green Bay, Minnesota is today. Sorry, not next weekend, but it's Green Bay's at
Oh,
Minnesota
yeah, it is
today.
today. Yep, my bad. Yep. That's
And
you're
so
right.
listen to the stats on this. Green Bay's 9-6 against the spread. Minnesota's
Mhm.
10-4-1 against the spread. Number one in the league that way. Minnesota
Yep.
is a 1 point favorite at home, which tells you that Green Bay might actually be the favorite in this game. And we've got an
Mhm.
over under, because they build in that 2 to 3 point spread for the home team.
Right.
So if Minnesota is only favored by one, it's kind of like the bettors are saying they expect Green Bay to, win by
Upset.
two.
Right.
Yeah. So, and they're looking at an over under of 49. Pretty confident about that over under because I think pretty sure they combine for about 54 points a game.
You're right.
Yeah, and I've got Minnesota taking that as the home team. They're better against the spread. They both have a whole bunch on the line here. They're both fighting for a lot because you got to remember, right? Minnesota has a chance to be the number one team, not
Yeah.
only in their division and avoid going on the
No,
road, but
yeah.
also being the number one NFC team or the number one NFC team seed, like for the whole
Yes.
playoff. So
Yeah.
Minnesota has a lot to play for, and they're at home. So I have confidence in Minnesota today.
Mhm.
Um, the now the other ones that are interesting, Carolina, a rivalry game, nothing on the line, but Carolina is going to Tampa Bay today, and it's a
Oh,
big spread, 9.5 points. And of the over-under is 47.5. So they're talking about the implied point spread on this is kind of significant. Now,
huge
Tampa
line.
Bay
Uh,
Tampa Bay is 9-6 against the spread. So everything would indicate that Tampa Bay should be the easy pick here, and they might be. But Carolina over the last 6 weeks has come on fairly strong relative to their overall performance. So we've been talking about Carolina's regression to the mean and to the positive even versus how they played up until this point. Bryce Young
mm,
was one of the top quarterback performers in fantasy last weekend. Chuba
cool.
Hubbard, I believe, was the number one running back in fantasy last weekend.
35
And
points. Yeah.
and Adam Thielen has been coming on really strong.
Yeah.
So now Chuba Hubbard's out, right?
He's
So we've got a new guy coming in at running back, but nobody knows him, right? So you know how that sometimes goes with brand new running backs before people get film on the guy, and he's like also like. I'm pretty sure he's from like their practice squad because like they had Miles Sanders in there, they had Jonathan Brooks, so that's like two other people in front of this guy, three other people if you include Hubbard, before this guy saw the field. And now he's got the whole backfield to himself, right?
Damn.
So when we talk about fantasy, we'll bring that up. So, anyways, Carolina again started out like 1-8 against the spread. They're now 7-8 against the spread. Like they've been on a tear the last month or 6 weeks. And at 9.5 points, even though Tampa's at home, I just feel like Carolina is going to be able to, because Bryce Young is a different quarterback since he got benched and came back. He is
Oh
showing
yeah.
confidence. He's looking like the guy who
Oh
was at
yeah.
Alabama.
Oh
So
yes. Oh
I'm
yes.
I'm thinking that Carolina covers the spread here today. And I think they
I
go over.
yeah.
I think they go over the 47.5. Tampa Bay will
Okay.
probably win the game, and on that good momentum towards the playoffs.
Right.
Tampa Bay again being a team that I don't think anybody really wants to play in the NFC playoffs. But I think Carolina covers the spread here today, so we shall
I,
see.
I, I I like that. I got them covering as well. I also got the over for the Minnesota Green Bay game. I think Green Bay actually does the upset because Josh Jacobs is going on a run. I would also take the over on that. I don't see a scenario. Actually, there is a scenario where they both underscore, but I
Yeah,
definitely that's my game of the week. It's not even close. We got Green Bay
yeah,
versus the Vikings.
yeah, for
But like
sure.
you said, Bryce is playing at a different level right now. I think they cover, but also I think Tampa is going to win this game
Yeah, me
because
too.
also Tampa's on a roll too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Like it's
Yeah,
it's it's
Tampa's on a
difficult
roll.
to really accurately call that one with the 9.5 point spread. That's a hard
I
one.
think that they
But
moved it to 10.5. Actually, it came up. They rose it by a little bit, 10.5. Yeah.
in the last, I mean, because I checked it
Uh,
at 9.5 90 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's 10. The Las Vegas Insider has 10.5 right now.
Everybody, so
Crazy, man.
everybody's jumping in on. Yeah, I checked it on Vegas Insider, so it's
Yeah,
moved up a
putting in some
point.
money.
It's moved up a point in just the last 90 minutes. So the money's pouring in on
Okay.
Tampa against that. So yeah, no, I like that pick. I like that pick even more. 10.5 is an awkward point spread. So I guess they're figuring Tampa Bay wins by easy 2 touchdowns, but I'm not sure I see that with the way that Carolina has been playing over the last 6 weeks.
It's gonna be tighter for sure. I feel the exact same way as you. What do you think
Yeah.
about this one? Yeah, I hope you circle. I know you circled this one on Dallas versus the Eagles. What do you think
Yeah, I
about this
did,
one?
dude.
I
I
knew you did.
did.
I knew it. We think simpatico, dog. What do
Well,
you think about that?
because it's another it's another one where the numbers don't quite fit, right? They don't quite work out. So let me find that game for you because yeah, I did have that one covered
And for
because
me, I feel like this. It's the line right now is 7.5 for the Eagles.
another
Expecting
awkward
a touchdown a
number.
little bit more, and 35, 37 and a half in terms of over under. I'll give y'all my take. Jalen Hurts is not in the game. He's still, I believe, in concussion protocol. And I learned recently because I was actually talking to
Kenny
Roberto
Pickett's
and
playing.
texting earlier. When it comes to Dallas, actually not Dallas, my bad. The Eagles lose a lot of games without Jalen Hurts. When Jalen Hurts not in the lineup, they're like 1-3, something like that in recent
Yeah,
years. So when Jalen is not there, Dallas or any team is favored. And Kenny Pickett will not take you to the promised land. The Rotos picks, by the way, are Dallas money line, Browns money line, Bucks money line, Bills -10. I think you have that covered. That's what I'm getting from this. And
yeah.
10 is Titans money line. Shout out to Roberto's picks, man. Let's go.
Now,
Let's go.
let me tell you about Dallas at Philly for all the reasons that you mentioned in there, right? Kenny Pickett's going to be at quarterback. That's probably why the over under is low. But what's going on today? What's the main narrative in the Philly game today? It is Mr. Saquon Barkley. He is 268 yards short of cutting off all that damn noise about how he had an extra game to get this record. And so do not be surprised at all if it's all Saquon all the time today,
Mhm.
right? So that is a real possibility. Dallas is also 5-2 away from home. Like Dallas has been awful at Jerry World this year, but
Yes, they
Philly's
are.
also 6-1 at home, right? So there's no, but that's strange to have a team that's that proficient over 500 on the road, and that's Dallas today. And also, who else has been doing okay for Dallas lately? Cooper Rush has been
Cooper
settling
Rush.
in. He's been putting up some numbers, right? He's probably the best quarterback on the field today by far, right?
Not even
Because
not even hesitation.
right,
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett's
No
terrible,
hesitation.
so it is going to be Saquon all the time against that
Mhm.
Dallas D that's been sort of hurting. So my
Mm,
guess is this is a running game. I'm taking
right.
Dallas to cover as well because I don't think
Mhm.
7.5 points is accurate. And the over under, I don't know. I'm going to take the over regardless. 38 points is fairly low, and I think Dallas can score enough. And I think Saquon, like if Saquon gets what he wants done today, like look at him to score. Look for him to account for probably 21 points for Philly all on his own. So I
Mm.
think they get over 40 points. I'll take the over on that one.
Nice. We're in full agreement. Everything you said, Unc, fully agree with that. Dallas can come through the back door, and Saquon, like you said, he is really pushing Eric Dickerson. And by the way, you just give Saquon the ball 20 times, that record's gonna get
25.
trashed.
Give him 20. Give
Yeah.
him the ball 25 times today. Like just do the
Oh,
math. 6 yards a
oh
carry,
yeah.
25
Oh
times,
yeah.
right? That there's 150 yards right there, right? So what if they go
Mm,
crazy and he gets 35 carries, right? So like,
yeah.
because you know what
And he,
happens, right? As
yeah.
you get over 30 carries, the likelihood of Saquon like just abusing that defensive line and popping off some 65 yarder,
Mm. And
right?
Dallas is known to be horrible against running backs. So it's gonna be it's gonna be a whole game to watch. I think it'll be
Yeah.
entertaining. Any
Very
last game
entertaining.
you want to touch on before we go on our fantasy talk? Yeah.
The only other one that's the only other one that sort of caught my attention that is that Buffalo Jets game, like we were talking about earlier. We've got the Buffalo by
Yeah.
10, and all the numbers are in Buffalo's favor for why they should be favored by 10. I
Mm,
just don't like just the rivalry dynamics, the time of year.
yeah.
Buffalo's overperformed at 12-3. They
Right.
underperformed against the division rivalry, the Patriots last week. Pats,
Mm,
and as I mentioned, mid-season when all the pressure was on the Jets, when they were still trying to put together a season with integrity, like
mm,
they only lost to the Bills by 3 points. So I'm just
right.
preaching some caution. And I also, too, with the way the Bills have been playing lately, the Bills have been allowing some points. The Bills have been well underneath those double digit point spreads for most of this month. So I'm just
Right.
saying, I'm just preaching some caution where the Jets are
Mm,
concerned. I would never recommend taking the Jets, but they might well cover that 10 points today because they're playing
mm.
in Buffalo, though, right?
They're playing in Buffalo, correct? And
Yeah. So I
yeah,
mean,
the
like
Jets at Buffalo.
chances are Buffalo pulls it out, but I'm just preaching a little bit of caution with the Jets with the way they've been playing lately.
Mm,
Um, other than that, I mean, I could give you some comments on like the schlub, the crap games and whatnot, but I don't think
yeah.
anybody even actually really wants to hear about that.
I don't think a lot of people are getting excited for Texans Jags, bro.
Right, unless you're one of those guys, that bets the whole slate just because you're an addict, right?
Yeah. Oh man, great breakdown, brother. Great breakdown. I say it like
Right.
this: if there's an upset alert, that's that Jets Bills one. I have
Yeah,
all the upsets
yeah. Let's
possible.
put it like that. If there's an
Divisional.
upset alert today, it might be the Bills. That's right.
And I say it like this, man. Fantasy football championships, man. You know what I mean? We talking some championship
Yeah,
games,
dude.
man. Things are getting down to the wire. Who should we be looking at to circle on our last push in order to get this championship, this dub, the bragging
Dude.
rights? You know what I mean? Some of that money, some little money,
Yeah,
put on
dude.
our
You're
wallet,
you're in
go buy
that
an
you're in
expensive
that game
grocery
today,
store.
right? You had a
Yes,
big
sir, I am.
blowout game last week. Your team is firing on all cylinders right now, man. You're gonna take my mantle. I won it last year. You're gonna win it this
Yeah,
year. Podcast has credibility.
yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So for championship
Give me some
weekend,
advice.
for
Yeah.
championship weekend, of course, the most obvious advice is, stick with the horses that brought you to the dance, right? I mean, like, don't be doing anything crazy this week unless you've got a situation like Chuba Hubbard has been he's been your horse to the dance so far, and all of a sudden he's on injury reserve, right? So the guy's name is Raheem Blackshear. He's going to
Right.
be going up against Tampa Bay today. He's going to have the whole backfield to himself. So if you need to replace Chuba Hubbard all of a sudden, guy's name is Blackshear, and he's available on waiver wires everywhere. And he's going to have the backfield to himself. So it might be a decent replacement. He ran at about a 4.5 to 5 yard per carry clip last week. So
Okay.
just going to put that out there. But what I've done and what you
Mm,
should do as a fantasy guy, well, before this point, but just to make sure, run down the list of who the top 10 players at each position have been over the last month, over the last 4 weeks, just to see
mm,
who's cresting, just to confirm for yourself that your players are part of that mix. But it goes down
mm.
like this. Your number one QBs, your number 1 through 10 QBs have been Allen, Burrow, Jackson, and Jeff Goff is coming on, man. So all you guys who've got Jeff Goff on your bench as a backup and whatnot, just watch him carefully today. Mahomes is
Yeah,
number 5. Number 6 is Sam Darnold. Over the last month, Sam Darnold is your number 6 quarterback in fantasy.
right.
Jaden Daniels is number 7. Russell
Mm.
Wilson has been number 8. So for They Not Like Russ, I'm not sure if she's in the consolation game or in the
She's in the
championship game today.
consolation, yeah. She's in the second place game, yeah.
Hey man, she took a gamble on Russell Wilson and he's paid off, right? Kyler
Yeah,
Murray, as
yeah.
I say, is number 9 now, and Baker Mayfield is your number 10 quarterback over the last month, which is actually surprising. You'd think he'd be a little bit further up. But
Mm.
nevertheless, as far as waivers, Rodgers and Bryce Young, as I mentioned, both those guys are out there. If you're in a 2 QB league that needs a replacement, or you're just not happy with your matchup or something like that. Also, as I mentioned, maybe Cooper Rush is somebody
Mm.
if you need somebody at QB today. He's, I think, available on waivers, but it's sort of been top 15 over the last month. So that's better than you might have imagined, but not a panacea, but a good fill in. At
Right.
running back, as I mentioned, Chase Brown over the last month is your number 1 running back in fantasy. Number 2 has been
Right.
Kyron Williams. Number 3,
Mm.
surprisingly, has been James Conner. Number 4 is
Oh.
Josh Jacobs. Bijan Robinson has been number 5.
Mm.
Gibbs in Detroit, number 6. Cook in Buffalo, number 7. Number 8 has been Acham. And number 9, surprisingly, has been Zach Charbonnet, but he's already played for the week, and it wasn't that impressive. Barkley,
Mm.
believe it or not, Saquon Barkley has only been your number 10 rusher over the last month, surprisingly enough.
What?
Yeah, in fantasy. In fantasy.
Oh,
Not that you're sitting in
oh.
for anybody, but just the same.
It's a fact.
On waivers, again, as I've been saying for the last 6 weeks, good luck finding anybody on waivers for a running back because they've all done so well this year. They're all snapped up. No one's flown under the radar.
No,
But the
no,
only
no.
guy that might work for you if you have an emergency is Amir Abdullah, has surprisingly for Vegas as they've churned through all their running backs. He's the last man standing, so he gets the whole backfield to himself. So he actually put up decent numbers last week. He's
Right.
got a decent matchup today as well. Tank
Yeah,
Bigsby in
same.
Jacksonville is another guy who's been, if you need a plug and play for whatever reason, has been productive of late.
Right.
Wide receiver over the last month, your top 10 has been Jamar Chase, of course, Nakua,
Mm.
Adams, number 3 over the last month, Jefferson,
Yes.
number 4, T.
Yes.
Higgins is your number.
Yeah.
Burrow has the number 1 and number 5 receiver in fantasy working for him. Brian Thomas Jr. again, right? Brian Thomas Jr. has had a fantastic rookie year. Number
Oh
6 in
yeah.
fantasy over the last, even as the season has tailed off. That guy's been
Mhm.
matchup proof, like we mentioned last weekend,
Oh
and he's
yes.
been strong, right? He has maintained his consistency throughout the season to the point that he is the number 6 running back in fantasy over the last month on a team that's completely been tanking since midseason.
And you know
Surprisingly,
what? You
Keenan.
know what's interesting about BTJ? He's won me some matchups. On top of that, he's over exceeded. Remember, we were big fans of Marvin Harrison Jr. early in the season.
Yep.
BTJ is doing what Marvin Harrison Jr. was supposed to do. He's been absolutely amazing in fantasy.
And Malik Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors as well. You're absolutely correct.
There
The
you go.
LSU wideouts.
Surprisingly, over the last month, the number 7 receiver has actually been Keenan Allen. Good old Keenan Allen again. Yeah, but he's already played this weekend and he didn't get crap. So, but Mike Evans has been number 8. Jerry Judy, there's somebody that maybe not everybody has on their team, but he's been doing pretty well. But of course, he's out for this week, so it doesn't
Wow.
matter. McConkey already played as well, but you know the one guy on waivers, but no, he's already played, so it doesn't count. But Xavier Worthy has slowly come on a little bit. Not like Brian Thomas Jr., but Worthy, surprisingly enough, has been a top 12. He's been in our wide receiver 1 over the last 4 weeks. So if you played him against the Steelers, you probably did all right. Now, Mims is another guy that surprisingly did really well. But the other one, the big pickup for anybody who needs a plug and play at wide receiver, if you don't already have him, it should be Adam Thielen. He's the only sort of guy flying under the radar right now. Now, at tight end, as I mentioned, McBride finally got off the schneid. He finally got 1 touchdown. But he's done too, so he's not playing. But he's been your number 1 wide receiver over the last month, followed by Jonnu Smith, Brock Bowers, Mark Andrews, finally back up to par again. Sam Laporta has finally been playing well again. He's had 3 TDs in the last 4 games. Thank goodness, finally. And he's got, out of his last month, I'm pretty sure 3 out of 4 games have been double-digit games. So they're starting to throw to Sam Laporta more, finally. Fryermuth was number 6. Njoku, who is out. So take note of that. Anybody who's got Njoku on their team and has been relying on him over the back end of the season, he is out. Right? Kelts is number 8. Kittle is number 9. And Kraft is number 10. So all the usual suspects, right? We always keep saying this. At the end of the season, over the last month, more times often than not, the guys you relied on and were relying on, but often got frustrated with in the first 6 weeks of the season, here they are, regressing to the positive in the last half of the season, just like we always talk about. For defenses, again, surprisingly, the number 1 defense over the last month has been Cincinnati. Surprisingly, Atlanta is the number 2 defense in fantasy over the last month, right? And they're on waivers a lot. Right, KC is your number 3 defense. Denver's your number 4, but again, they both played already. Dallas is your number 5 fantasy defense in the last 4 weeks, and they're on waivers a lot.
Okay.
Green Bay is your number 6 team. Seattle, surprisingly, has been your number 7 team in fantasy over the last month. So they're an option for some people too if they're trying to figure out which defense to stream. Rams have already played, but they're number 8, as we mentioned too, doing well. Baltimore finally has a top 10 fantasy defense of note of late. And I'm sure that last performance absolutely helped. But again, they're off the board too. Staying with number 10, the Chargers. Right? So your 2 waiver wire pickups, if you need a plug and play or a stream that are probably available that have been performing well over the last month in fantasy would be surprisingly Atlanta and Dallas. Your number 2 and your number 5 defense in fantasy, right? And then, of course, your kickers, right? Because we talk about kickers. Aubrey in Dallas is your number 1 guy over the last month. Some guy named Ryland for Arizona. I don't even recognize the guy's name, but he's the number 2 kicker for the last month. But he's off the board because he's already played. So Aubrey's your number 1 kicker today. Dicker, the kicker, and for the Chargers, he's been your number 3 guy done for the day. But the Miami kicker, Sanders, in what should probably, it's going to be, the weather's not going to be perfect up there in Cleveland, right? It's going to be rainy. So not sure how that does for a Miami kicker, whether he's going to find himself in a plus or negative script as far as kicking goes. He might find himself kicking 6 or 7 times today because they're getting frustrated because of the poor play, but also with the slick weather and whatnot. It's probably going to be a running game in that Miami-Cleveland game. The other kickers that have done well, Myers for Seattle is your number 5. Boswell for Pittsburgh is your number 6 guy. Brandon McManus, name from the past, has done well. He's the number 7 kicker for Green Bay over the last month. And McLaughlin for Tampa Bay, Cardi for the Rams, and Bates in Detroit round up your top 10. Now, the guy, though, that probably nobody has, but they need to pay attention to if they need a kicker for their championship or they're unsure who to play, and that's Will Reichard from Minnesota. He had a 6-month
Mm.
period, a 6-week period in the middle of the season or a month where he was out. So his stats weren't really percolating up the charts. People could easily have missed this guy. But since he's been back from injury over the last 3 games, I think he's had double-digit points in 2 out of 3 of those games, and was within a whisker of 10 points in the third game. And so he has
Mm.
been looking really solid and is on waiver wires if for whatever reason you need a kicker, and he's kicking indoors. Right? So
Ooh.
things to think about in the championship game if you're trying to fine tune your lineup.
Yes,
Right?
sir. I
So
like that.
there you
I
go.
like
There's some fantasy points for your championship.
I love it. I love it. Appreciate your game and your insight on fantasy football, Unc. You've been killing it. I took a lot of your advice too, man. So you know what I mean. I've been double dipping a little bit, but like you said, my advice again is go with the people who got you to the dance. Be confident. Watch your matchups. Right. If you feel like it's a high scoring game, start that person. If you feel like it's gonna be low scoring, check the weather too because that's going to determine the type of game you're going to
Yeah,
have. And
absolutely.
guess what?
Definitely check out the weather.
My advice, brother, is do not neglect your kickers and your defense. Do not neglect them. Guess what? Let's say Brock Bowers has a bad game. Unlikely, but your kicker can get you 20 points. Your
Yep.
kicker, your defense, if they put a shutout like the Baltimore Ravens did, 17 points, maybe 20 points in some leagues. That will
Yep.
be the difference in your fantasy matchups. Do not ignore the kickers. I know you made it to the championship. You probably have a beast running back. You probably have a great receiving core. Your quarterback is probably consistent. But the difference is the person you're playing is the exact same thing.
Right.
If you have
That's
a
right.
kicker or a defense,
So
that
so
can
your
give you the
kickers and
edge
your
in the
defense
matchup.
can make the difference. You're right.
Yes, yes, and that's my thing that I've been noticing. You put the right defense in or the right kicker in. Brandon Audrey can get you goddamn 17 points and you win. You know what I mean? That's how
Yep.
I look at it. That's my advice. You made it to the championship. Have fun with it. Have fun with it
Yeah.
and talk your smack after. Or
All right,
otherwise,
brother. Amazing.
let's talk about another controversial part of the MVP conversation. Because when I said this was the closest MVP race ever, I was lying. I was bullshitting. That was closer. So that's why we need Unc to
Yeah, it
give us
wasn't
some
nearly as
history
close
lesson.
as they tried to make it sound out.
Fact. Fact. Let's go back to 1997 when I was like 3 years old.
Right?
Talk about Brett Favre and Barry Sanders. Unc, talk to us, man.
Brett Fraud.
Brett
Yeah,
Favre.
this
Facts.
is this is to me, this was just one more episode of where Brett Favre was, given all kinds of prestige and privilege that he didn't necessarily need, to be given. That was his third freaking MVP, right? And okay, sure he did okay, but you know what? He wasn't even the best quarterback in that league that year, as far as I'm concerned. Jeff George had more passing yards and fewer interceptions, right? So
Mm.
Favre did have a good year. He had 35. He had 35 touchdowns, but he had 16 picks, right?
16 picks? Oh my
16
god.
picks, 1-6,
Oh my god.
right? So 35-16 is not a great number, right? Think about Josh Allen and Lamar this year. You're talking about 40. You're talking about a 10-to-1 ratio, right? So Lamar had lots of screw ups, or not Lamar, but Fraud had lots of screw ups on the field. He did put up a lot of points. They did go, they did win their division. They did go, ended up winning their conference and all that stuff. But the decision on MVP is made before the playoffs start. So it's based solely on that, on your regular season win and what you did to the regular season. Thing is, though, did Favre, right, with what's his face, on defense and whatnot, the minister of defense on there,
Oh,
like
Reggie
he,
White. Reggie White.
like
Yeah.
Reggie White. Like they had so
Mhm.
many other good things going on their team that, of course, naturally, Brett Fraud excelled, right? Whereas Detroit, on the other hand, perennial losers, right? Guys who never seem to have it all together. With Scott Mitchell at quarterback, who wasn't that bad. He had fewer interceptions than Favre. But so obviously everything ran through Barry Sanders, and he had an epic year, right? He was only the third guy ever to go over 2,000 yards, right?
Wow.
So yeah, big number too, 2,054. And
Wow.
carried at about 6 yards a carry, all that type of great stuff. But like, what on earth are we talking about here? Why on earth
Mm.
would you include Favre in that? The first guy in what 20 years, the first guy in 25 years almost comes in and runs for 2,000 yards, almost sets the
Wow.
record, drags his team to a 9-7 record, and I think they made the playoffs as a wild card. I cannot remember for
Mm.
sure, right?
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? Like, Barry Sanders was the most valuable player in the league as far as his relation to his team, right? Because if it wasn't for Barry, there wouldn't be much of anything at all. Like, the number of games that he won single-handedly by himself in spectacular fashion was way more than what Favre did. So I just feel like, they looked at Sanders, they looked at Detroit, they looked at the running back position, and they just said, "We don't really wanna. I don't really wanna. We don't want to give Lamar his third MVP. We don't want. We don't wanna, right? Because how can you leave Brett Fraud off, the face of the league, and all that type of stuff? For some
Right.
shifty gyroscope running back from Oklahoma State playing on Detroit. It's like, you know what? Sometimes you got to just shut up and just do it because it's the right thing and obvious thing to do. And that's what happened in that year. And I got ticked off back then, and it made me more ticked off when I remembered it now. Because it's like like when you watch Barry Sanders play, especially that season, like, he literally is like a gyroscope at his hips. Like, his body, his range of motion at his hips is just unbelievable. Like, nobody I've ever seen. Like, I've seen a lot of great running backs. I've seen a lot of guys power through the middle and stuff, but he is the only guy I know who can just go from 0 to top 40 speed in like 3 steps. Like,
Mm.
just amazing. He could stop, pivot, run back the other direction, head upfield, like just amazing. And he was at the very best of his best in 97, and they made
Mm.
him co-champion. The buggers.
Oh.
So yeah, it's going to be a short overtime. I don't have a lot to say about that. I think fraud was fraudulent in that MVP campaign, and I think that
Mm.
Barry Sanders was far more impressive and far more valuable when you put it in the context of the rest of the season. So I did
Mm.
not like that I did not like that co MVP, and I will not appreciate a co MVP this year either. Right. So go by the data. Right. Unless there's some extraordinary narrative that couples
Mm.
the data should be like overweighted in favor of narrative.
And that's what I'm saying in general. I did a little bit of research, and this was one of the few running back MVPs ever.
Yeah.
Meaning, in other words, you basically have to hit 2,000 yards to get an
To get it.
MVP. We had LaDainian Tomlinson, we had Adrian Peterson, but those MVPs were out of this world. I think the most recent 2,000 yard season was Derrick Henry, and he didn't
Mhm.
even win an
And
MVP.
he didn't get it.
So the overvaluation of the quarterback, I think, might have played a role in
Yeah.
the co MVP because Sanders put up some great numbers. And for people who don't know, it was 2,053 yards. He was averaging 128 and a half per game, 11 touchdowns. Detroit actually did make it to the playoffs. They lost, which happened a lot to Barry, which, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just unfortunate. But long story short, it was a fantastic 16 game season, by the way, not
Yeah.
17. Fantastic, amazing play by Barry Sanders.
Well, yeah.
Amazing.
And Barry was just one of these situations. I mean, it was like King Henry in Tennessee, almost the exact same situation. Like,
Right.
I'm sorry, but until it becomes much more common, like this year, we might actually have two 2,000-yard rushers with Henry and Saquon. That's
Right.
extraordinary. But up
Mhm.
until that point, certainly up to 97, got to remember, right? Like, he was only the third guy. And it had been over 20, it had been almost 25 years since the previous guy had done it. right?
Wow.
Running for 2,000 yards is an extraordinary accomplishment. If Favre had tossed for 5,000 yards and had all those
Mm,
interceptions or whatever, like I would have said, okay, sure, right? But I'm
mhm.
sorry, 3,500 yards and 16 picks is not an MVP season, right?
No, man. Come
3,500 yards, 35 TDs, and 16 picks. Like that's a good year, top
on.
five, but it's not an MVP season. And so, as far as I'm
Mhm.
concerned, Barry Sanders got ripped off.
I have a question for you, Unc. Just I want to just a general idea. Should they just change the MVP award to like a quarterback award? Because it's gotten ridiculous, brother. Like we talked about this even on our first episode. You said TJ Watt deserved the MVP. And that season that you talked about, Watt played amazing, man. I think he tied Matt
Yep,
Strahan's sack
that's
record.
right. That's
So
right.
my thing is, I get so annoyed. I'm not saying quarterbacks are not needed or they're not important, but just name it as a quarterback award. In baseball, they have the Cy Young. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Specifically for the pitchers. You know what I mean? So like what we have to amend the MVP because I think Saquon should be the MVP, bro, for
Well,
what he does for
I
the Eagles. Go ahead.
I think they should switch it around. Right. I
Right.
think that they should switch it around because as it is right now, the offensive player of the year award is kind of like the tip of the hat to anybody who's not a quarterback. Right.
Right.
So the offensive player of the year award is for the best wide receiver, the best running back. What I think that they
Mm,
should do is that they should have, yeah, the number one QB award, and then they should have an MVP award. Right. So maybe
yeah.
you add one to it or something like that. But to me,
Yes.
you can't keep calling the QB to the exclusion of other players the MVP all the time. I
Right.
just feel like the other players should be in it. But I guess that's all really just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You're just rearranging labels and names. But I just feel like
Yeah.
the quarterback should be their own thing, and the
Mm.
MVP should be one of the other players.
Respect, Unc. By the way, if y'all get the chance, go watch out some Barry Sanders highlights. He is an
Yeah,
absolute beast. I got him above Emmett. I don't care. I got him above Emmett. In my ranking of running backs.
I think
By the
he's
way,
better than
shout out.
Emmett too.
Yeah, way
Yeah,
better.
yeah,
For what he did in his limited sample size, bro. What? Retired
yeah.
early?
Retired early, right? Never had like an off season. Durable as all get out, but it's the eye test. When you watch just how incredible that guy was as far as his ability to get out of trouble, like most of the time Emmett wasn't in trouble, right?
No,
But like
no.
Sanders had to like his ability to stop on a dime and reaccelerate. Never seen anybody like it. Not before, not since.
Cold MFer, man. Shout out to Unc. Shout out to Sleepy Euphoria. I'm about to beat your bum in fantasy tonight. You know what I mean?
Right
Shout out
on,
to
buddy.
everybody who's rocking with us, rocking with y'all. We rocking with each and every one of y'all. We got in the right pocket. Appreciate y'all for come tuning in. We're gonna do a quick playoff preview next week coming up. So not fantasy talk, not much OT. Just give y'all a quick
Yeah.
hitter.
Just
Appreciate
analyze
y'all.
which games matter.
Exactly. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, man. Unc, we did the damn thing, man. 2025 coming up. Let's go,
Yeah,
brother.
that's it. That's it. That's it, brother.
Mhm.
Awesome
Appreciate y'all
stuff,
for tuning
buddy.
in. Appreciate y'all, and we out.
All right, buddy. One love.